Well, hey, we're here at the gathering
Yes.
and going to do some podcasting this week and talk specifically to some alumni. And this is the man, the legend, Jam Patterson. So
Yeah.
tell us when you went to Kingswood, which was Bethany at the time.
Back in the day, I got there from 90 to 93. Loved it. I guess you would say one of my biggest regrets is I was still young. I didn't take education as serious as I should
You
have.
are really good at basketball, though. I do remember
I
that.
was. I was actually pretty good. Randy Lewis was actually the reason why I went there because he was from North Carolina East, and I remember just going. It was just a culture shock coming from North Carolina to Bethany or Kingswood at the time, and I mean just how to dress. Wearing suits all day on Sunday back then.
Well, I noticed you have your Soul Train on, so you know.
I still live in the 80s. My heart is still there. And so, but I mean, to this day, I mean, I share a lot of sermon illustrations from Bethany, the best years of my life. Some of the greatest people were there. Danny Gordon, of course, yourself, Mr. Higgle, the Gorvettes. I mean, what greater people. I still keep in touch with Paul Lauritsen, actually. I have to call Paul on a landline phone because he won't get social media. I mean, it's 2023. He can at least get Facebook or something.
So just share a little bit about where you're at now, Jim.
I'm a pastor in North Carolina East. I'm at Foster Street Wesleyan Church. Loving it. We have an orphanage that we do out of the Dominican Republic. So we travel there quite a bit, love every bit of it. We've actually grown our church up to where we mothered another church in our district that was kind of on the slide, and we took about 100 people. Our youth pastor went to be their pastor, and so we actually have two churches under our umbrella in the East District, and man, it's going phenomenal.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's so good to see you.
Absolutely, man.
It's been
so
such
good
a long
seeing
time.
you.
Yeah.
It has been. But you haven't aged. I'm amazed at this.
I have a painting in my attic that's getting really old. You know that like.
Oh,
anyway,
yeah,
so.
something because you do not age, man. You look incredible. I keep up with you, and so, man, and I am very appreciative of the years that I spent with you. You're a great guy, great mentor, man. You do great things for the school and for young men and women in general.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time just to stop by and to share a little bit. If you had like one thing that you could share with somebody who's like studying for ministry now, maybe somebody who's feeling a call,
right?
Like, well, what advice would you give them?
Don't be afraid to go outside your comfort zone. I've got to preach this Sunday, and you know, discipleship is huge. Find you someone who can keep you accountable, keeps you in the Word, but also encourage you to go outside your four walls. Go to places that normally Christians or pastors wouldn't want to go because the mission field is so great right now. And my thought to those guys and going into ministry is, man, break down the walls, get outside, get in your community, get in your neighborhood. There is so many needs. Like in Asheboro, 56% of Asheboro, according to studies, wakes up and has no general idea. Let's go to church. And so the more you get out there in your community, the more you get out there and reach, the more effective you will be in ministry.
All right. Appreciate your heart. Thank you, man.
All right, man. My man.
So are we on YouTube and Apple Podcasts?
Yeah.
I'm a star!
Okay, so we have two Kingswood alumni here.
Whoop,
I'm gonna
whoop,
let
whoop,
them
whoop, whoop.
tell you who they are, what year they graduated, and what they're doing now.
Wow. I go first?
It's all
Okay.
you, baby.
So, hey, my name is Michaela Arbor. I got a little name tag here. I am currently working with Global Partners as a regional mobilizer in the Great Lakes region. So I look over and recruit people to be missionaries all around Michigan, Wisconsin, and Illinois. And I graduated Kingswood in 2018. Coolest crew out there. Might be biased, but I studied intercultural studies at Kingswood, and yeah, that's kind of me.
Yeah. I'm Mindy, Tarnish now. My last name was Lowe when I was at school. Graduated in 2015. I also studied intercultural studies, and I also work for Global Partners. I am also We have a lot in common,
We
Michaela.
do. We both worked in Buffalo.
Yeah, that's right. But I'm a regional mobilizer also. I mobilize or recruit folks out of the Northeast region of the United States, which is like New York State, Pennsylvania, Vermont, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, Massachusetts. Kind of like the eastern, northeast side of the United States, just like I said. So, yeah. So that's...
Guys, like, if you could pick out like one thing that you took away from your experience in Kingswood, what would it be? Like one big overarching thing you learned.
Oh my gosh. How do I pick just one, Mike? How do I pick just one?
That was like 4 years of like,
yeah. I mean, I think for me, it was the classes and the relationships that I made with my professors and like fellow students. Yeah, I mean, like I use the information and things that I learned in class. I was a missionary also, and I studied like intercultural studies. So I mean, I use the things of my degree from my literal classes I went to Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I use that information every day in my job.
Yeah.
So I think just digging in and really like doing the work. You got to do the work to pass, but like really digging in and committing it, and then the people that I met at school and the students, professors, those knowing people in our Wesleyan denomination has really, I think, served me very well outside of school.
Bouncing off of that, I think the networking from Kingswood is like Mindy and I, we were like friends at school. We were both from Michigan, so we traveled back and forth. But like just people that you grew closer with and you did more ministry with afterwards was really helpful.
Yeah, like I got her a job and then she got me a job.
Yeah.
And now we work literally. And now we work together and but it's been really cool to like still be a part of your life and vice versa, this, 8 years out of college.
Yeah. I definitely would say for me the Kingswood's really small. People are always shook that when I went there, it was like under 200 people.
Right.
But I had to explain to them, it's like you take the ministry degrees in like IWU and you make it its own school. That's basically what it is. But I loved this. The downside was it was small, but the upside that it was small and there was such a strong community there.
Yeah.
There was more opportunity to like get plugged in, to do more hands-on ministry, to get more leadership experience. So that was super helpful to be able to grow in that and grow in my skill set. It's what my strengths are, my weaknesses are.
Can I add to that? Can I add what I wish I would have done more of? I wish I would have done more like hands-on things that were outside of the classroom, because I do use my classroom knowledge every day, and that's great, but you can't substitute practical, hands-on, physical knowledge for anything else. And I think that's something that Kingswood is special and has a lot to offer. And I could have done more, and I think it would have served me better, but still feel like I'm in a good place.
It's good.
Thanks, Kingswood.
All right. Well, thanks for stopping by. All right. Well, I'm here with Kevin Wilson, the man, the legend. Yeah. And so, what year did you graduate? What is now Kingswood, but was Bethany at the time?
Bethany when I was there. 1988 was
wow,
my graduation.
That's going back. Yeah.
Year, going back a few years.
Yeah.
And I think we started at Bethany together.
That's true. We started at the same time, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been my second year, but your first year.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was a teacher. I was on the other side of the desk, but
that's right.
I looked about 15. I was 25, but I looked about 15. So I went through a lot of years there where I get congratulated at graduation every year, but it's not like that now.
No, well, I don't think it's like that for any of us now.
So just fill people in on what you do, Kevin, where you're at and what you do.
Well, I'm now pastoring in Pembroke, Ontario, a church called Wesley Community Church. Been there for the last 5.5 years. And so moved there from Halifax, where I was 10 years in Halifax.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah.
You were at a church plant in Halifax, or a newer church, I guess.
It was kind of like a church plant, but it was an established church. But we met in a high school cafeteria, probably for the first 7 years of my ministry there, before moving to a theater, for Sunday mornings, and that worked really well for us too.
Yeah. So if you could just kind of pinpoint, like, when your time at Kingswood or Bethany, like what was the major thing that you kind of learned through those years? Like, what was a takeaway for you? Big takeaway.
I think for me, it was, in all honesty, it was deepening my spiritual walk with Christ. Because my first year at Kingswood, Bethany, would have been 82, 83 as a grade 12 student, and I was not a professing Christian that year. And it wasn't until after that year that I would say I made that decision to follow Christ, and took a year off school and come back, and it was really just deepening that relationship with Christ, feeling called to ministry, wanting to work with young people, and so that's what I was most grateful for. Was
and you had an experience with hockey there too.
Yeah.
At the school that was quite. It was just a cool experience.
I've always loved hockey, and I was a very competitive hockey player. I had the privilege of playing for the town team. For I think 3 of the 4 years I was there, I played for their rep team. The last one was their junior B team. And then in 1987, 4 of us from Bethany had the opportunity of going overseas and playing hockey with an organization called Christian Outreach International. And
this was back before the Iron Curtain fell, right?
We actually went to Sweden, Finland, and Russia. And we were in Russia as a Christian hockey team. First time ever they allowed a Christian hockey team to go into Russia. And it was just a crazy experience. But probably the biggest experience of that trip was where we went into a high school to share Christ with we had the privilege of being able to go in and share Christ with the students. And we were able to go into the classrooms, and we were paired up. And myself and another Bethany alumni, Kingswood alumni, Paul DeMerchant, were paired together. And we went in. We had the opportunity going into the school ahead of our other teammates, and we had preached in the hallways and started leading people to Jesus in the hallways. And then we went into the classrooms, and there was one particular class where we said at the end of our time, if you want to leave, you're free to go, but if you want to accept Christ, accept Jesus as your Savior, stay, and we'd like to pray with you. And nobody moved. And we said, did you understand what we just said? And the teacher said, we understand, we all want to accept Jesus. And there was probably about 25, 30 people in that classroom. And by the end of the day, we probably saw about 300, 350 people come to Jesus. And when you see that kind of movement take place, you kind of wonder, what happens later? Does it stick? A few years later, there was a young person who was part of the leadership team in Sweden that was part of our group. And this young guy would go on to play in the NHL. And they asked him about his faith because he was a strong Christian. And he pinpointed a time when an American hockey team came to his school and mass revival broke out. And so if you ever wonder...
And that was you guys, right?
That was us.
Right.
That was
That's
our
amazing.
Group.
That's an
and
amazing
so if you ever
story.
wonder whether your group can make a difference, I've always looked to that. And just it reminds me, never underestimate the power of the gospel.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good spot to stop right there. Boom.
Yeah.
My name is Andrew Thompson. This is my wife, Charity Thompson. And we graduated in 2009.
Yeah.
Well, that's when we
didn't get to walk, but
we did our internship at the end so that we didn't have to come back. And then we got pregnant with twins, so we really couldn't come back during the graduation thing.
That's true.
And yeah, that's the answers to the question, right?
Yeah. And so what are you guys doing now? What's your ministry role?
In 2009, somewhere around there, we accepted a position at my home church in Houghton Lake, Michigan. And we're coming up almost on 14-ish years there now. It's super weird. I'm the youth pastor, and Charity's the children's pastor. We both do the music and stuff, and my dad's the lead pastor. And he's been there since 1989.
Don't forget about your mom.
And my mom
Your
is
mom's
something called a community resource pastor.
Yeah.
My mom is ordained too, and so is my wife, and so it's super cool. A church our size should not have 4 pastors, so that's weird. And they shouldn't all be related. That's super weird. Staff meeting once in a while graduates into vacation conversations.
Into family situations, yeah.
It's super weird.
But it's good, it
and
works.
then we'll be at Christmas or something, and my dad will be like, oh, I forgot to tell you. And I'm like, just stop. It's okay. So.
But it's been good. We've been there almost 14 years. We're looking at doing a daughter church. We're looking at doing that right now. The board is discussing the shifting of in another year and a half for his dad to kind of take more of a retirement position.
He's ready to retire.
Yeah, he's ready.
That's why I'm going to try to get him to download an app soon, because every time he talks about retirement, I try to add more technology to his life. So
Keep it going.
If you guys had one takeaway from your time at Kingswood, what would it be?
Oh man.
Do for your
So I definitely built some friendships that have lasted forever, and I don't always get to keep up with those people, but when we get to see them or talk to them, 100% of the time we just pick up where we left off, and it's almost like that big blip in between when we got to see each other isn't even there anymore.
And besides the friendship is the professors.
Oh yeah.
To run into the professors, to contact, call, anything, and anytime.
And we learned a bunch,
incredible. Of course.
There's that. I learned a little bit. I just found out I scored pretty good on that incoming freshman orientation test, so I'm not sure how much
that they
I
didn't
learned,
make anybody else take anymore.
I know, they didn't. That was a great experiment that never saw fruit from that, so I don't know.
It's true. Dave Higgle made us do it, didn't he?
I can't remember, honestly. It's all a blur.
Thanks for stopping in, guys.
Oh, you're welcome.
Jeff, you and I go way back. We're going back into the annals of history, back when Kingswood was Bethany. So
That's right.
So what year did you graduate?
Graduated in '84
Okay.
and spent 3 years there. Came away with 2 degrees, Christian education and also Bachelor of Arts in Religion.
Yeah. And so, what are you doing now? Where
I'm
did that lead you?
pastoring in High Point, North Carolina, and we've been at our current church 7 years.
Okay.
And very traditional church, and we've worked at making some changes there, bringing, PowerPoint, TVs, into the situation, and it's all been good. It's been really good.
Yeah.
And of course, then we've dealt with COVID, and that really, threw us into a fix there. But yet, we still operated through that. And even though the doors were closed, we went to Facebook and YouTube and that type of stuff, and picked up some cameras and, that type of thing. And we're doing all right.
Yeah, good. Yeah. So if you, looking back at your years at the school, is there what would be the biggest thing you learned there in your time at Bethany?
Well, first I went to Bethany because I knew God wanted me to go there. It was Bethany then, now Kingswood, obviously.
Yeah.
But I knew God wanted me there. I didn't know where God was leading me, but I knew that God wanted me, at least get a year in at Bethany, and it turned into 3 years. A guy by the name of John McElhaney.
Yes.
Was instrumental in calling me into his office my first year, February. I was a first-year student there. I'd already completed 2 years of university at the University of Maine at Fort Kent. And he said, Jeff, you're the only guy that really has come across my desk, and I think this would be good for you. And he talked me into, I think God talked me into, but he was very much instrumental in getting me to go to Easton, Maine for a practicum or an internship. And back in those days, it was only 6-8 weeks. I spent 15 weeks in Easton. And that was God telling me, okay, Jeff, we'll take care of Christian education, but let's go into ministry and pastoral ministry. And I would say that was huge. And there were other things. Obviously, campus life was great, fabulous. There were some good things. We had some interesting things in chapel that really just stirred the heart. And so I look back at those days, and they were good. Ron Mitchell was a good guy. He really was. We had all kinds of things to say about him, but he was a great guy.
He was a man with a pure heart. He really
Absolutely,
was. Yeah.
absolutely, and I'm so thankful.
Yeah.
You know, when I got out and I took my first church, guys like H.R. Ingersoll and Ron Mitchell were just still took so much, looked at us as young guys going out, and I can remember they're thinking so highly of us and praying for us, and just wanting the best for us in ministry, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for taking the time to chat today. I appreciate
Hey,
it.
not a problem.
All right.
Hey, I'm Joel Guptill. I graduated in 2014 and spent some time in South Dakota at a church there, and then I relocated to Nashville in 2019 and I'm pursuing a music career there.
And I'm Matt Guptill. I graduated in 2020. I started off living in St. John, then moved down to Nashville to live with this guy, and now I'm planning to go full-time into front-end development.
Yeah, so what in your time at Kingswood, if you had to summarize the main thing that happened to you there?
Yeah.
Got out of it, what would it be?
Yeah, for me it was I was wrestling with a lot of thoughts on what do I believe, what do I want my life to look like, so it was a really great place to process that. One of the professors there, Dr. Smith, was really helpful on that journey with me and kind of processing life. So that was my biggest takeaway from Kingswood.
My biggest takeaway was the whole journey of maturity for my life. I went into Kingswood a little more immature than I had hoped, and then through the journey and through the people I met, I really learned how to live life for God and how to live life in a mature mindset.
Hey, well, thanks for stopping by, guys.
Yeah, for sure. Good to be here.
There we go.
All right. So Peggy, tell us where you're at in ministry right now and what you're doing.
Well, I graduated in 2012. Woohoo!
Yeah.
First praxis class.
First class of the Praxis program. Yeah.
And moved to northern Alberta first, then to Newfoundland, and now I'm in Lower Haynesville, New Brunswick.
Okay.
Yeah, a small church. Started out with 4 people.
Wow.
And now we're up to about 20.
Oh, awesome!
Since June.
Right. And so, if you could kind of capture your time at Kingswood, what was it that God did for you in your time there in college?
Well, I think one of the things is I've always been sort of a doer, right? And I love to do things. I'd show up somewhere and say, okay, what can I do? But what Kingswood did was lay the foundation of theology for me and why we're doing it, what was the purpose. So visiting prisons, going on missions trips, going to New York, going to soup kitchens, doing all of this work, and why we want to do that. We want to connect with the unchurched. We want to connect with those people who need to hear the good news of the gospel. And for me, putting down that foundation of theology and doing has been part of my ministry as I moved on. So it's never ever left.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for taking the time to stop by today.
Absolutely, loved it. Thanks, Mike.
So I'm with Don Grant. Don, why don't you tell us when you graduated from Kingswood and what you've been up to?
Well, I graduated in 1991, and I'd already been at First Wesleyan, which is now Journey Wesleyan. So a lot of names have changed in the Atlantic District, seems, at least the churches I was at. And was there for 4 years while I was going to Kingswood.
Yeah. You were like a second career guy, right?
I was a second career guy. I wasn't called into ministry until I was 29. And a little before that, but I went then. And then we stayed for a couple of more years there. Resignations happened with the senior pastor, and at that point in time, everybody was resigned all at once.
Right.
And we ended up going to Ontario. We went to Markham,
Yeah, you were in Toronto for a while, right?
Toronto. Markham was just about 20 minutes north on the Don Valley Parkway, and on a good day.
Yeah.
And we were at a church called Milliken Wesleyan, and it was a church of 21 nations, and a lot of Caribbean people. It was a wonderful place to be. And then we hit the resignation thing again in 1996, and we went stateside to Syracuse, New York, a church called Lincourt, and we were there for 11 years, and then moved again in 2007 to Lock Haven, Pennsylvania, to Hillview Wesleyan, and we're still there. We're in our 16th year.
Yeah,
and so
which is a long time in pastor years, right?
Yes. I never wanted to be in a place where you're just there for a couple of years.
Right.
And so the longevity, I like the long times in the places where you're ministering.
Yeah.
You make so much more connections, not necessarily just in the congregation, but in the community.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm one on community involvement.
Yeah, so I know you are. Yeah. And so, if you had like one thing that you would like say to Christians right now, what would it be? Like one kind of piece of advice for the times we're in.
I would say think things through and think well. Don't listen to what everybody's saying. Listen to what God's saying through the Word, because that's where you're going to find the truth. Sometimes people's interpretation can take an excellent truth and twist it a little bit, and you want to stay pure to the Word. And so read the Word, think the Word, live the Word.
Yeah, that sounds like a good place to end.
Well, we were both graduates of 2020, class of 2020, where we got shut down a little early and missed our graduation.
I got kicked out of Canada, so
Yep.
that was fun.
Yep.
So really recent graduates, and so tell everybody where you're at now, what you're doing now.
So we're both in Holton, Maine. We're married. I'm the assistant and youth pastor at Holton Wesleyan Church.
And I've recently been doing phlebotomy at the hospital, so that's been fun.
If you guys have like one takeaway from your experience at Kingswood, one big thing was, okay, this is what I got out of the experience. You can share with people like, what would it be?
So I graduated as valedictorian. And for those unaware, that means top of the class. I put a lot of emphasis on study and spending a lot of time doing homework and focusing on book work. And although I'm glad of my accomplishments, I would definitely say it is not worth sacrificing time with people that you might not see again in an environment that is so spiritually enriched and streamlined for the Spirit to move as Kingswood. I could have spent so much more time with people and praying and doing study and talking theology rather than sitting in the library reading books.
I would say mine was probably the opposite. I was very much involved with doing things outside of the classroom, and that's just kind of where I was comfortable with. But in that, I was uncomfortable with getting myself out of my comfort zone and going and doing ministry or evangelism. So I got grown in that area, but then also learning how to get myself out of the gray zone of where my beliefs lie and my convictions, and then finding a good medium between being flexible with people and also having good convictions and beliefs.
Thanks for taking it to the camera, but and also at each other.
Right. Yeah,
so,
I like that. Yeah.
So I'm here with Eric Curry, and Eric, when did you graduate from Kingswood or Bethany at the time, I guess?
Definitely graduated in 1992 with a Bachelor of Arts in Religion and Youth Ministry major.
Yeah,
it was a great time. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and and tell us what you do now.
Sure. I'm now with Campus EDU, and that's a Christian educational technology company, and I'm the vice president for enrollment. I work with Christian colleges, Bible colleges, universities, also K through 12 private schools, and also on the professional development side as well.
Yeah, so you went through some years of youth ministry, and then working at different colleges and universities, and now this is a fairly new venture for you, right?
It sure is. If you would have said 25, 30 years ago when I was at Bethany Kingswood University now, I could never imagine that I would be in higher education, being involved in this. I won't say what my grades were in high school, but let's just say for all those out there watching right now, they were not representative of who.
There is hope.
That's actually what I want to say is there is hope that I moved into executive leadership, never thought that was going to happen, and here I am. And that's only God, and also, as I've said before, the training that Kingswood gave me and the people like yourself who poured into us and showed us, hey, believe in mission, believe in passion.
Yeah, and you live right here in the Orlando area, right?
We do, yeah. Really hard to live in Orlando in January.
Yeah, I don't understand why they keep having the gathering here.
I don't either.
Instead of Minnesota.
I know. I can't imagine. I don't know why. I can't figure this out. It had to be a spiritual reason.
Nothing against Minnesota. But
no, nothing against Minnesota.
So if you had a
go Vikings. I like Kirk Cousins, by the way. Non-disclosure. My senior pastor's his dad, Don Cousins. Check it out.
So. In your years, like kind of at the school, if there was like one big takeaway for you, like in what, like God did in you in those formative years, like what would you say it was?
Wow, for me, yeah, one. Okay, you said one thing. That's really hard. I'll take a couple. One was a passion for God's word. That really work and study and allow God's word to speak into your life. And the second thing was, and I've seen it in your life and the faculty's lives there and even currently, is don't be afraid to risk for Jesus, and don't be afraid to go all in and to put your chips in and say, God, use me, and live your life with open hands and allow Christ to pour into you. And that has driven me, and that has been the biggest thing I learned. And I watched that by people who modeled it, and then it happened in my own life. And like I said, I was this little country farm kid, and nothing against farm kids at all, but people would have looked at me and said, there's no way that this child, even this teenager could end up in higher education, and that's only God, and that's because God worked in my life through my open hands, and I'm grateful for that, forever grateful to Kingswood for that.
Well, thanks for stopping by for a few minutes and sharing with us. So.
I loved it, man.
Right.
Love Kingswood. Mike, you're awesome.
I was on podcast for a bit.
Did you really?
Yeah, for like 100 episodes.
All right. Awesome. Well, this is Nick Guptill. Nick, when did you graduate from Kingswood?
I graduated 2015.
Okay, so fairly recent graduate, yeah. And so, and you've kind of had an interesting kind of journey after that, like where, give us a little bit of the history of where you went after Kingswood.
Yeah, I did, for my internship, did my residency at 12 Stone, and then continued that for just over a year. So I was in Atlanta for kind of a year and a half, moved to Virginia for a couple of years, was a full-time worship pastor at a church in Virginia, Lynchburg, Virginia, and then felt the Lord quite literally calling us to Sydney, Australia to learn from a church, from Hillsong Church that we'd wanted to learn from for a long time. So we moved to Sydney, moved whole life over to Sydney, Australia for 2 years, and then started feeling the call to start a family, and got pregnant while we were there, so that was pretty confirming. So we flew back, lived in my wife's parents' basement for a year, and then moved to, now we're in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Ransom Church, and it's been about a year and a half.
Yeah, and what's your role there? What's your main thing?
I am the downtown campus worship pastor. They have 3 campuses, and I'm their downtown campus worship guy. So.
Okay. Awesome, man.
Yeah.
So if you had like any advice to give somebody who was like younger and feeling a call to ministry, like you were a few years ago, what would you say to them? What advice would you give them?
I would say the easy thing to do is run from it. I did that for a couple of years. I ran from it, and then I just felt the conviction, and I was like, you know what, I'm supposed to do this. I think the good thing is because I have a calling, it has never felt like a job to me. It's never felt like 8 to 5, even though it is 8 to 5. It's never felt that way because I know it's what I'm supposed to do, and it's just the lane I know God has me in. So,
yeah. So if you have a calling and you follow it, it's like you don't. It doesn't really feel like work.
No.
Although it doesn't feel.
It feels
like
natural. It feels like what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the time to chat. So.
Absolutely.
All right.
Zach Painter is the greatest.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
I think Zach Painter is the greatest guy in the world. Zach Painter needs a pay raise.
There you go.
Biggest mistake they made was letting Sean Miller go.
All right, tell us who you are, guys, and when you graduated.
I'm Rebecca Perry, and I graduated in 2004. And yes, go ahead.
I'm Graham Perry, married her, and graduated in 2003.
Yes.
Yeah. We're in St. John, New Brunswick.
Yeah.
Kind of co-pastoring. Yeah.
Yeah.
You emphasize on children and staff relations, and I'm the lead guy, but she's really in charge.
Isn't that the story for
Well, we've always just done it together,
Yeah.
I guess, and
It works.
it works for us.
We work well
yeah.
together. Not every couple can say that, but we do. I'm weird, she's normal, and it works. It really does. It really does. So
I keep him from saying stupid things. And
sometimes.
Well, hopefully that'll work today. So if you could if there was like one big takeaway from your time at Kingswood, what would it be? What did you get out of the college experience?
For me, relationships was awesome. I still connect with guys that I didn't know before I went to school, and we get together. You see them at events like this, at the gathering. But I love the relationships, and they're lifelong, incredible. Obviously, met my wife there, so that was a pretty good relationship. But that was a big one for me.
I think maybe for me, underlying what was just building my confidence. I'm still not an extrovert, but just getting my feet underneath me of who I am and what God is calling me to, and to be able to stand on that and be confident in what God has for me. And so I think, that might be the biggest underlying thing from school.
I had an oral comm professor that told me I couldn't wing it anymore.
That's me.
Yes.
Yeah, and he gave me an A- instead of an A because he could tell I winged it.
Yes.
He said it was good, but actually I joke, but that was one of the best advices I got, because it just was like, you got to put the work in this, and so it changed me a lot.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for coming, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
So, Jason, tell us when you graduated from Kingswood, or it might have been Bethany in those days.
Yes, I was in the Bethany days.
Yeah, and what you're doing now. So
Good. I graduated in 2001. I always have to think about it because I graduated a semester early because of grade 13 in Ontario at the time. But 2001, and I am the solo pastor in North Bay, Ontario, Laurentian Wesleyan Church, and doing well there. My wife Chrissy and I, and we're
now,
enjoying
explain where North Bay is for those who might not know.
It sounds intimidating, but we are 3 hours straight north of Toronto.
Okay.
So if that's where we are. So we're in the Central Canada district, and North Bay is called the Gateway of the North. And I grew up in Ontario, but I admit that when I moved to North Bay, it really opened my eyes just how everyone thinks we are north. We are not north.
Right.
So much
There's a north beyond the north, right? Yeah.
But it's a great, about the size of Fredericton, I think.
Yeah.
It's a great city. So
yeah. So if you, I've been asking people if you had like one big takeaway from your years at college, what would it be? What was the thing that happened to you there that you kind of took into your ministry?
Yeah. It's it's funny because I was asked this question a few years ago. I think I would say this a similar thing. To hold on, there's something about being in an intense spiritual environment, if I could call it that, right? Where you're kind of immersed a bit, and the world has a tendency of eating that away, and you're kind of on a high when you kind of leave college, and you need to really dig in. I guess this is more aspirational, maybe.
Right.
But you need to really dig into the stuff dig into the Lord, right? Yeah, because sometimes you're coasting a bit, and I found there's a little bit that I'm like, because it's just going to be hard things,
Right.
when they kind of hit you, it jars you, a little bit. And I realized what an incredible place Bethany was, or Kingswood, for me to kind of grow. But I found sometimes I needed to personally dig into some stuff that I almost coasted a little bit. And so,
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, Christian environments can do that, right?
Yeah,
so,
but it was just a great time. I loved the opportunity to just kind of. I mean, I'm musical, right? I
Right.
just loved being part of chorale at the
Right,
time,
right.
And the groups and traveling around, and yeah. it
Yeah,
was awesome.
you were really involved in that, so
Yeah,
that's great opportunities. So, well, thanks for taking the time to chat.
Yeah, it was great.
All right.
Generally, we just kind of talk to each other. So
Good.
So yeah, it's the last day of the gathering, and here with Jay Guptill. So tell us when you graduated from what was Bethany and now Kingswood, and what are you doing now, Jay?
That's right. I'm a Bethany grad from 1985.
Yeah.
My wife Sharon, she as well graduated in 85. We were together those 4 years, 81 to 85. Then we launched into ministry, served in Canada and in the U.S. in different churches, different districts, had really good experiences all the way along. Recently we just felt God stirring us to begin a new ministry called Made for More Ministries. Our goal is to encourage and empower Christian and ministry leaders, and we are going to do that through coaching, counseling, and retreats. So that's kind of the quick version of it, but it's to really help the church to be healthy, and one of the ways to do that is to help leaders to be all that God wants them to be, all that God has made them for more, right? So that's the idea.
Right, yeah. And you guys are based out of New Brunswick, Canada.
We are.
But willing to travel.
Yeah,
anywhere,
absolutely.
Anywhere the Lord takes you, right?
Yeah. It's right now, of course, with the world when it comes to counsel or coaching, virtual is working for a lot of people. So we can do it virtually. But we also do actually go to Kingswood 1 day a week to work out of the counseling center, to meet people in person if need be. And we can meet people at our other location at Beulah Camp as well. So
yeah. And so what would you say like the greatest need, like in terms of what you're doing, like what are you seeing right now kind of coming out of COVID in the last few years? Like what are some of the issues that you see are like the biggest ones?
Well, I think I heard somebody say what COVID did is it accelerated things in ways that maybe they were already existing, but it has accelerated it even more.
Yeah, and maybe intensified too.
Intensified, yeah. So I think part of the whole reality of any Christian leader is, am I serving out of a Christ-centered, Christ-focused life? So how is my soul with Jesus, right? So COVID threw us all in a whirl, especially in the leadership of church life. For me, actually, it was interesting. I found that I had a little bit more time to invest in my soul, whereas I felt like when I was in church life, it's like you got to go, you got to make things happen. So
suddenly you were aware of things you weren't paying attention to, right?
Yeah,
they were there, but you just weren't paying attention.
So I think the reality for a lot of leaders is, am I really truly caring for my soul? Is it solid in the Lord, and how am I doing with that?
Right.
So we'll always talk about Sabbath and spiritual rhythms and things that are just every single day, doing them day in, day out, are going to have a long-term effect, right? So we'll also then speak to the opposite of that, which is forgetfulness. Right? Forgetfulness, busyness, distraction, things that will be taking us away from where we really need to be centered. So if we can continue to develop the core of who we are in Christ, then that's going to help us in our leadership.
Yeah, and I kind of discovered some of that like the hard way. When I was 37, I was totally blindsided. I went through a period of burnout, and I didn't see it coming, and I was having a good time, and all of a sudden I just hit this wall.
Yeah.
And it was because I wasn't really taking care of things, and so I had to learn at that point that I wasn't Superman and how to pace myself.
Exactly.
And how to live a healthier kind of balance, I guess.
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, we have our self expectations of what we want to see accomplished or how we want to succeed in our lives. We have, of course, church expectations of a church board or people within the church. But then you can have district or the church culture expectations. Like we acknowledge those who are succeeding. We acknowledge those who are, or we applaud those who are like really doing well.
Right.
But man, if I'm not doing so well, how do I feel about that, right? And if I'm, of course, putting it all on myself, like I've got to make this happen, then we're going to be missing, and we're going to lose a lot of energy because it's like all about me, right?
Right.
So how do we keep centered in Christ, even in how we view how the church life is going, how my personal life is going, and so on? Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thanks for taking the time to chat today.
Hey, it's great to do it.
All right.
And take care, everybody.
So, Jeremy, tell me when you graduated from Kingswood.
I graduated in 2001, which back in the 90s seemed like, wow, that's going to be so far in the future. It's a whole nother millennium.
And what are you doing now? Tell us about your ministry role.
So I've been just almost going into my second year at New Horizons International Church, which is the only international Wesleyan church in Canada.
Yeah, and before that, like kind of leading up to that, I want to give us just a quick picture of your history, kind of leading there.
Okay, so I worked with the Anglican Church before that, and I worked with an interdenominational mission agency before that in the Middle East. And before that, I was a youth pastor in the Wesleyan Church, and before that, I was a missionary with Global Partners, the Wesleyan organization.
Yeah, so you've had like a varied career.
It's been varied, yes.
Yeah, and so I think probably like an international church in Canada brings together like all those things you've done under one roof, right?
Yeah, and actually not just the multicultural dimension, but also so I didn't grow up in the Wesleyan Church. I grew up Anglican. I was discipled by Pentecostals. I was influenced by the Vineyard movement, and then ended up at Kingswood and in a Wesleyan youth group, and then Kingswood. So where I am now is very much, I have people from around the world and who have a multiplicity of different church expressions as well.
Yeah, if you had if there was one thing you took out of your college years, one thing you took away from what was Bethany at the time, but is Kingswood now, what would it be? If you could sum it up, what would it be?
So I always tell people this if they want to hear about it. 50% of what I learned, and I'm not minimizing either 50% of the halves I'm talking about, but 50% of what I learned at Kingswood was in the classroom. It brought me up academically in a way I really needed, and also theologically. I needed the grounding I received, but also the other 50% that was invaluable was the practical ministry I did on trips and on campus.
Yeah, and that's we've always tried to hit that balance, and so hopefully we're still hitting it. But that's good to know, because that's kind of the goal is head, heart, and hands, developing everything at the same time. So
yeah,
man, hey, thanks for taking the time to chat. And I
My
know
pleasure.
We're busy here at the gathering, but it's good to talk to you.
You want to start? You want me to start?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Scott Simmons. I went to Kingswood Bethany Bible College in the late 1900s. I was there from 1988 to 92. You want to introduce?
Yeah, I'm Kirk Perry. I went to Bethany back in the 90s as well, and graduated in 94. And I'm currently the pastor of Brockville, the Brockville Wesleyan Church in Brockville. Coincidentally, we named it after the city we're in.
It's good strategy.
Yeah,
that's good.
It's easier for people to find.
That's right.
They tend not to drive to Ottawa when they're looking for Brockville Wesleyan. So,
that's right. That's good. That's good strategy.
Yeah.
I am at Alive Wesleyan Church in Central South Carolina. Serve as the campus pastor for the main campus church.
So, I don't know. I think one of the things we're supposed to say something about what we learned when we were at Bethany or something.
If there's anything that you took away from your college years, you want to share with people?
Well, most people don't know this, but when I went to Bethany Bible College, I couldn't read or write, and then I took POW, and immediately it just came to me, and I think one of my favorite. Yes, I think one of my favorite experiences of that was when Mike put me in a freezer I think nowadays you get arrested for that, but he literally locked me in a freezer at the Bible college and then asked me to write about my experience. And I don't think he appreciated it very much because I was writing about how I was dipping my fingers in the ice cream that was in the freezer.
You're taste testing now the ice cream, yeah.
Yeah, because you do that when you're locked in a freezer. You got to survive.
As one would do, right? Yes. Yeah. I did not have an experience like that.
Oh. I thought it was all of us. Sorry.
I don't know what this. I loved going to Bethany. So I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina, and 24 hours away to Bethany Bible College. And here's the deal. I think my time at Bethany, by the end of the 4 years, just the empowerment of my calling, and it changed because I was such a shy, awkward, low self-esteem. Like I really didn't believe in my calling. I questioned my calling my whole first probably 2 years, and it was at Bethany that I just really felt empowered, like for that calling to be able to do. It was just an incredible experience, and I met the woman that I would marry, and so that was a good thing too. So.
Well, if I'm going to give a serious
I know,
response,
right? I just messed you up.
I would say, I think one of the things I learned the most at Bethany was Kingswood University. Sorry, you can edit that part out. You can't do anything. You can't do any of this stuff alone. And like, I think for me, developing the relationships I developed while I was at Bethany and having people I could always call on and know that they were there. And I even had professors that would drop by my house every once in a while that I could offload on, and it was that was Mike, by the way. And it's just cool to be able to know and learn that the kingdom of God is much bigger than any one of us.
Right.
And when you realize you're on the same side, the same team, and fighting for the same causes, there's so many more people you can talk to and that can help you.
Yeah. It was just a great, for me, opportunity for spiritual growth and maturity. Oral communications with Mike. I barely passed that class freshman year. I mean, it's awful. You remember? Come on. It was so awful. And to know where I was and where I am now and just how God has worked, I know all that was foundational. And you were talking about Mike. That's so true because Dave Higgle really kind of reached out and would help me and invest in me and spend some time with me. So that's just cool just to be able to experience that at college level. So anyways.
I liked Oral. Oral Com was one of my favorite classes.
Yeah, there's some interesting topics. And
the only one that Mike really wanted to give me a bad grade on was because he asked to come as someone we're not, and I came as a rapper, and he didn't think that was far enough away from who I really am.
That's right.
So I didn't know the assignment. So.
Oh right.
Yeah.
These chairs are a little tippy. These rented chairs are a little tippy here at the gathering.
Not tipsy, tippy.
Tippy. Yeah. So, tell us like who you are, when you graduated from Kingswood, and what you're doing now.
Yeah, it's Tom Neary. Grew up in central New York and loved my time at Kingswood. Graduated in 2008. And now we are doing something a little crazy. We are planting a church inside a donut shop.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Continue.
Think it's pretty sweet. Our heart really became a couple things. How do we plant a church that's sustainable? We see a lot of churches that fold after 3 years in large launch models. And we were just trying to solve some problems. You know, the two biggest problems were how do you continually meeting new people, and what are you doing to keep the money coming? Because you do need money to run your church. And so we said, man, if we could get this donut shop thing going, we would actually be able to have enough people coming in, because we would be successful in meeting new people and reaching people, and also through the selling of the donuts we'd be able to fund the ministry. So that's what we're doing.
Okay, and how's it been going?
So it has been it's been quite the process. So we moved. We did what everybody said you shouldn't do,
and we parachute dropped into Savannah, Georgia. We had been there once on a vision prayer trip, and just felt the confirmation of God that this is where we're supposed to be, in Savannah. And so we said, all right, we're going to do it. And we sold our home up in New York, and we moved down, and we got there, and about 5 months later, COVID hit. And a lot of the plans that we had, about a month before COVID, we actually bought a food truck. We had, through a bunch of crazy random events, we found this food truck, and we were saying, God, if this is what you want us to do, allow us to have the money to buy it. And in a week, we raised $11,000 and we bought the food truck. Crazy stuff. And then COVID.
Right.
And then COVID. And I'm not like somebody who has done a lot of mechanical work or like work on building something in a truck. And so I just kept feeling like God was saying, like, hold up, like I'll bring those people to you. You just be faithful in the next step. And so for a lot of COVID, the next step was just continuing to work my job in the community. I took a job at Starbucks back in New York and was able to transfer down to Savannah doing that. It allowed us to meet incredible people in our community and continue to do the ministry without actually having everything that we need to do it, and continue to move forward. So,
yeah, hey man, bless you and all you guys are doing. It's good to be creative and to think outside the box, and to just kind of and take a parachute every once in a while. So
yeah, I have learned that, the biggest thing I've learned through this is if you're humble and allow God to do things that everybody else would look at and go like, why is he working at Starbucks? If you're allowed to do that for him, he will open up the doors that you need. We've seen that, his faithfulness over and over and over again as we've been humble enough to do what he wants versus what we want. So,
yeah, awesome. That's a good spot to end, Tom.
There we go.
Right there. Boom.
Thank you.
From like the last people I interviewed.
Everybody
went to the school in the 80s.
Oh,
yeah.
I thought you were going to say something like they were really prim and proper, and now we've got Sean Miller.
And now we've got Sean Miller. So. Sean and I go way back. Sean, you were probably like 15 or something, or when I met you.
Yeah.
So I've seen Sean go through, like from a teen to a Kingswood student to someone working at Kingswood.
Yep.
And tell us where you're working now.
Yeah, so I made my way back home to where I grew up, to Victory Highway Wesleyan Church in Corning, New York. I'm the student ministry pastor there now. So it's an interesting placement to go back to where I grew up, but so much has changed while so much has stayed the same. But the youth group is in a really different spot. It's been really cool to see another layer to our relationship is that your daughter and son-in-law were my youth pastors. So I feel like there's this great legacy to live up to, but the group and the cultural context is so different from my experience. I've only been there a few months, but it's been really fun to jump back in and see how things work now.
Yeah, so you're kind of right on the front end of, looking at it from the front end of things. And so what would you say would be like the major differences between what you knew as youth group to like youth ministry now?
Yeah, a huge shift from my experience to now was we were bringing in around 200 students on a Wednesday night when I was in high school. It was very outreach oriented, get as many students in.
You had like a youth rally every week.
Youth rally every week, high energy, lots of games. And now, I mean, relatively we're a smaller group, about 50 to 60 students, but they are there. They're there for every event we do. They have come up through children's ministry. They're homeschooled and Christian schooled primarily. They know their stuff, and it's a really cool chance to start to disciple them and go deeper. We're starting a whole series on prayer where most of the night's not going to be them hearing a message, but breaking into small groups and practicing new ways of prayer together. So it's been a really cool chance to disciple, go deep, go into spiritual formation for students, because I think that's been a missing piece and part of why we see so many students leaving their faith when they leave youth group is because, oh wait, there's not a party at church now that I'm an adult, there's not pizza every week. But teaching them what to expect and how to experience the Lord in a lot of different settings through different spiritual practices, I think is going to be key for this generation to maintain their faith as they grow up.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to partnering with you guys sometime in the future, maybe on a missions trip or something.
Yeah, actually, off the mic, let's talk about that because we've got one on the schedule for this summer that we need to plan.
Well, let's do it. Okay.